Hi, everybody, and welcome to this special event as we think about what businesses can be doing to support Ukrainian refugees. We're so grateful for your attendance today, or if you're watching it later online. There has been just this fantastic response from the British public to welcome refugees from Ukraine. It's an unprecedented response. The government opened a scheme that 200,000 people have said they want to be part of. And I think that's just the tip of the iceberg. I think there's many, many hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that want to do something. And one of those groups of people that want to do something are businesses. And in the beginning, the government said there would be a special scheme where there'll be a kind of second phase to the humanitarian sponsorship program. We haven't heard what that scheme is going to be yet. So I think we should proceed as if the scheme isn't happening and instead build around what is currently existing. And if the government does open a secondary scheme, fantastic, we'll jump in. But I think because they've had this unprecedented response to the Homes for Ukraine scheme, where people are hosting refugees in their own houses, it means that we need to kind of wrap around and find ways to support what already exists. So today's an opportunity for you to hear from businesses that have kind of taken a lead. They've got some really innovative ideas and solutions, but there's also an opportunity for you to ask questions. We're monitoring the chat, so if you want to ask a question, just jump in. One question that we can ask you to get going is tell us where you are in the country and how you heard about the event. We'd love to see how that works out for you. I'm going to be interviewing each of the different panelists, and then there'll be a time for Q&A at the end, and you can ask anything you like, as practical or as visionary as you like. So let's just dive straight into that. My first guest is John Dale. And I didn't know John at all before the Ukrainian refugee crisis began, but he's become a friend. And Punch Pubs have really led the way in some really innovative ways forward for supporting and encouraging our response to Ukrainian refugees. John, tell us a little bit about your role at Punch Pubs, first of all, and then I'll ask you a little bit more about how you got involved.
Yeah, hi Chris. Thanks for having me today, and thanks for everyone who's joined as well. So I'm the strategic corporate affairs and ESG lead at the business, and I've been with Punch Pubs, who have 1,300 pubs across the country, predominantly wet-led community pubs in rural and suburban locations. I've been there about a year now. I was previously comms director, excuse me, for EI Group, the largest pub company in the UK. So pubs, hospitality have been at the core of what I've done for the last 7 or 8 years. I enjoy the sector. We've all been through a torrid time over the last couple of years. And really, it was kind of through a mutual friend that I was put in touch with you, Chris. And I think immediately, your energy, your enthusiasm, your keenness to do well by doing good was there for all to see. And I think, once I'd had a few internal conversations, we really wanted to help at Punch Pubs. And the rest, as I say, is history. And that was back in kind of February, March, Chris. And, there's a lot been going on since then.
Oh my goodness, there has. Tell us a little bit about how the business is structured, because that's a lot of pubs. How does it work on the day to day?
Yeah, so it is. So we've got 1,300 pubs, as I alluded to. They are predominantly leased and tenanted pubs. We have some, we call them management partnerships pubs, which is almost like a hybrid management model. We have about 300 of those. And then we have about 300 employees, head office employees, who are based either in the field, our operations team, or our head office in Burton-upon-Trent. But the majority of our people are our publicans, those who we work very closely. They are at the heart of their communities. They operate the pubs on a day-to-day basis, and they are self-employed operators. So they make the decisions, they pay us rent, they buy us beer. But in terms of we work collaboratively in partnership with them, we don't tell them what to do, but we encourage them to get involved with charities like yourself.
It's amazing. And I've been really moved actually by the energy and support that's come from the pub industry. You've had a torrid time these last couple of years with lockdown and the coronavirus, and now we've got a cost of living crisis, and yet you're still making space to help. Tell us why. People would say, you've got enough on your plate already.
Yeah, some people will probably think we're mad, but I think that ultimately we have had a torrid 2 years. It's been really, really challenging, but we've continued to bounce back. We are, as an industry, extremely resilient, and we continue to be. If it's not Brexit, it's the pandemic. If it's not the pandemic, it's a cost of living crisis and inflationary headwinds. We all know, where we are in the world with that, and it's not going to get any easier. However, I think that the fact that we are the patrons of the local within many, many communities across the country, we were extremely blessed by the support that we received from our patrons, our guests, during the last 2 years. And I think as a result of that, we felt as though we had a duty of responsibility and care to give something back. And whether it was our head office employees, whether it was our publicans or our management partners within our hybrid management model, people are just keen to get involved. People couldn't stand back. And, we have something called the Doing Well by Doing Good program, which is the heart of our Punch business. And a part of that is encouraging, all of our employees to get involved, to do well by doing good in their respective communities, whether that's at head office in Burton or out and about across the country. And I think that, we're really struck with the Ukrainian crisis. We wanted to do our bit, but ultimately we wanted to do a little bit more. And I think that's the conversations that have since unfolded with yourself.
As I said, it's really inspiring, and I've just loved the response from the pubs and the hospitality sector in general. Maybe that's the key. We are all about hospitality.
Yeah.
That we're trying to offer welcome and support to people that have had the most difficult experiences we can imagine. I think
Yes.
this whole crisis has touched a nerve and an empathetic connection that many of us think it could have been my family. I particularly remember the little girl singing "Let It Go" from the basement of a bunker.
Yes.
And thinking, my daughter loves that song, and it could be us sat there waiting for the bombs to drop. Tell us a little bit, John, about what Punch Pubs have been able to do, because it's really quite astounding.
It is. So I think, it was by our own admission, it's relatively light touch initially. I think we wanted to understand, what we could do. And to my earlier point, because the majority of our pubs are leased and tenanted pubs, we can't dictate, we can't tell people what to do. But we wanted to show our support, for the Sanctuary Foundation and the Homes for Ukraine scheme. I think ultimately where we feel we can make a difference is that we do touch local communities across the country. And, whether it's through pledges, whether it's through community assistance, accommodation, the majority of our publicans live above the pubs that they operate as well. And ultimately jobs, ever since Brexit and the pandemic, we've really been hit by a chronic skills and workforce shortage. And there is that perception challenge as well within hospitality about it being career of choice. So we just felt as though there was a real opportunity there. And I think the first thing we did was to, encourage people to pledge, sign up to the Sanctuary Foundation. We've worked with you since kind of February, March. We've communicated both internally and externally the work that we've been doing. We have an internal platform for our publicans. So we've shared a lot of collateral, a lot of communication information that, you've put on your channels of communication as well. And that really resonated. And whether it was head office staff, whether that was publicans, we were overwhelmed by how many people wanted to know more and wanted to help. And I think the underlying principle of all that was the fact that people have helped us over the last 2 years. And ultimately, we pride ourselves on the fact that not one of our publicans handed back the keys during the 2 years of the pandemic because of the support as Punch we gave them. So I think we felt as a duty of care and responsibility that we wanted to do something to help the Ukrainian refugees and ultimately the Sanctuary Foundation. So initially we communicated, we told people how they could get in touch, the pledge that they'd made to the Sanctuary Foundation to find out more. We've continued that dialogue, but I think probably the most exciting part of the partnership, which is still very much its infancy, but I know you're heavily involved in this, Chris, is we're partnering with Budweiser Brewing Group, who are a part of the global brand ABI. And we are stocking a beer called Che beer, which is a Ukrainian beer, which was brewed prior to the pandemic up until February this year in Ukraine. It was a real kind of traditional favorite. I think it stopped brewing on the 24th of February this year. So while it stopped brewing in Ukraine, it's already been started to be brewed in 3 other breweries across Europe, and more breweries across the globe are keen to get involved. So what we've done is we've partnered with them, and we're in the process of we will be communicating that externally over the next couple of weeks to let people know exactly what we're doing. But again, we've been overwhelmed by the amount of publicans that want to get involved in this. So what we've said is we've committed to a certain number of cases of beer, Che beer, as we call it, CHE. I've sampled a couple myself. It's very nice. It's a lager, actually, a really nice golden lager. And publicans can purchase it from us. But ultimately, what we're doing with the Sanctuary Foundation is that any sales that we make or profits that we make, we're going to donate to the Sanctuary Foundation.
It's amazing.
And ultimately, what we're also going to do is we're encouraging our publicans, if they're not already working with another charity, Ukrainian charity, to look at working and partnering with you ourselves. So it's fantastic. Early days. The beer's only been in depot, a few days. But again, we've been overwhelmed by people's generosity. So fingers crossed over the next few weeks, you'll see it in a lot of our pubs across the country, people drinking it. And ultimately, they're then doing their part to support the Sanctuary Foundation and the crisis in Ukraine.
So good. We're so grateful, John. I think a few things I learned from what you're doing. So one is, as a company, you led the way, even though you don't have kind of command and control about what your publicans do. You've set the tone as a central office, and that really helped. And we've seen that in the pledges. So when we were in the early days of Sanctuary, what we wanted to do is encourage people to volunteer to host people before there was a government scheme. Absolutely. And we had 11,000 people do that before the government opened its scheme. And it was great to be able to kind of name drop you guys on TV or at the CBI to say what you're doing. And your example of being early doors behind this movement has meant other people have got on board too. So we're really grateful for that.
Yeah, I think it's been really useful, actually. I think as well is that we operate under 2 or 3 trade associations as well. So I know you've had conversation with the likes of UK Hospitality, the British Beer and Pub Association, and the British Institute of Innkeeping as well. So there is a real growing consensus within our industry in terms of how we can support. So whilst we're pleased to be leading the way, there is a real united front within our industry to support you guys.
It's great. We're really grateful. And I think I saw in the FA Cup final, Che beer being advertised, which was great.
Yeah. So they are, I say, Budweiser Brewing Group, who we're partnering with on this initiative, are also working in the off-trade as well. So I know they've had conversations with the likes of Wembley, O2, and other arenas as well around the country to look at stocking the beer. So I think the on trading, I'm sure some people who are listening into this will have seen it in some supermarkets around the country. I think the off trade, I think, seems to be a little bit ahead of the game compared to the on trade. But ultimately we are trying to corral, and hopefully the publicity we're doing around this will encourage more people to get involved as well.
It's great. And for me, the Ukrainians feel, oh, good, there's a bit of my culture here. It's another way that we feel welcome, and that's really important. And we'd love to support the Ukrainian brewing industry for when the time the war finishes. Wouldn't it be great if there was global demand for their beer? That would
absolutely right. We act as a touch point for so many different community groups across the country, and even at a local level, publicans have told us how overwhelmed and humbled they are by the support that they're receiving. And we've even had Ukrainian groups around the country using some of our pubs to hold meetings and fundraisers. So, we are very much the patrons of the local, the hub of those communities. And, I think this just lends itself well to what we're doing with you.
Amazing. Thank you, John.
No problem.
I'm sure there'll be questions. We'll bring you back again in a minute, but really grateful for you. Just as you're watching this, what is it that you've heard from John and Punch Pubs that you might emulate? As a company, have you made a public statement about your support for Ukraine? Again, maybe however your business is structured, but you identifying yourself with this movement of hospitality could really have a ripple effect for other people watching on. Are there fundraising things that you might think of doing? Other charities are available. Maybe it's the DEC campaign, but giving your staff things that they could do to get on board is really powerful. We've seen that with the pub industry already. So have a think. What could your business do to raise funds to support Ukrainian refugees and people in Ukraine? Now, I'm delighted to introduce you to my next guest, Laura. And again, Laura's someone I didn't know at all before the refugee crisis kicked off, but she's become another friend. And it's an interesting story, Laura, how we know each other. Do you want to tell it, or shall I?
It is. Well, I can start, Krish, and then maybe you can fill in some of the gaps if that makes sense. So hello, everyone. And Krish, thank you so much for inviting me to join today. As Krish mentioned, we only met a couple of months ago, and he happened to contact my company, Seismic Software, via our website, because he saw that part of our online platform, we're a software as a service company that mainly sells business to business software, but he saw that we had an element of our platform that's all about training. And he thought, oh gosh, maybe that could help all of the folks in the UK who have volunteered to host Ukrainian refugees learn a little bit more about how to keep themselves safe, how to keep the refugees safe, and also welcome them and help them through this very difficult time. And so he actually called one of our executives in America. I'm based in London. And said, here's kind of what I'm thinking. Could the software do that? And we very quickly said, absolutely, it could. And there was no question from our executive team that we would love to provide this to Sanctuary Foundation and to Krish free of charge, and really help as much as we could at scale in the community.
It's been amazing. Let me tell you the backstory of how sadly, I wasn't that clued up about the business to business software industry. And I was at border between Moldova and Ukraine, and I met a group from Monday.com. I don't know if they're a competitor of yours,
but they're a customer actually. So
even better.
Yeah.
So Monday just do a fabulous job of kind of project management and automation, and they were there deploying kind of systems to help charities be more efficient, which I thought was amazing. This was like week after the war began. They'd already deployed at the border. I was so impressed, and we kind of stayed in touch. And I said to them, look, this is what I think needs to be made. I said, who is the best in class? Where would you go if you want to provide online training? And they immediately went to you guys at Lessonly Seismic. And, you know, the rest, as you say, is history. I did a tweet out to your CEO, and, you know, he put us in touch with Seismic because his bit had been bought out, and suddenly we're meeting up in London. Tell me, Laura, tell me about your role in Seismic, and then we'll get into, you know, how we're actually helping refugees through our partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. So I lead what we call our customer success team for Europe. So my team and I are responsible for partnering with all of our customers across the region to make sure that they're using our products and platform to the best of its ability. They're getting value, that the way that they deploy our software is in line with their business goals. So it really made a lot of sense when I got connected to you, Krish, on how can we make this successful for you, because that's what I and my team do every day with our customers.
That's such a brilliant job title, customer
success.
Yeah, I
know, it's great.
I feel like you're there for me. You know, you're cheering me on, and that's a great framing. If I ever have someone that needs to have that role, I'm definitely going to nick that title.
Yes.
And tell me, why would Seismic get involved? I mean, again, it's a tough economy for everybody. There's people have got stuff to do. You know, as we said, cost of living crisis that affects everybody and everything. Why get involved? Surely you're busy enough already.
Yeah, great question. And I think the thing that I think reinforces what I'll say is that our executives didn't even question that we would do this. And that's because we have a real ethos at the company, a strong value around giving back to the communities in which we live. And actually the day before, a couple of days before I got connected to you, Krish, my team had been saying, you know, what can we do? Prior to the pandemic, we sent teams out into our communities around the world where we have offices, at least quarterly, to go do various projects. And because of obviously health and safety measures and various restrictions, we'd had to rein that in a little bit and had been struggling a bit for what can we do remotely. And so when we got this call, it was like, this is such an easy decision for us as a business. It's something that we can easily deploy. It will scale, and it's really meaningful to the global community, not just, you know, obviously it has an outsized impact in the UK, but I think it's something that globally people can log in and access if they need, which is just fantastic. So it was a no-brainer for us.
Amazing. I'm picking it up from John as well. This sense of purpose beyond a bottom line. that it seems to be really empowering for staff to give them some practical things they can do to make a difference to people's lives.
Absolutely.
We realize there's businesses to run, and you know, people need money and finance to go, but an overarching purpose of doing good in the world. I loved what John had framed, you know, some of their core reasons for existing, and that's really important. I think I feel like business is evolving towards that more and more, that it is about making a difference rather than just making a profit. Do you find that?
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I think the generations entering the workforce now, I feel like that ethos is getting stronger and stronger. And it is highly motivating. I see it even in my team to think that, you know, every day, yes, we're working with customers, helping them earn more. But when we have an opportunity like this to say, actually, we know that everything we're doing here is serving a broader purpose and doing good for other people, it just feels nice to know that our software could do that, because otherwise it's just a lot of zeros and ones running in the background. But yeah, absolutely. It's been really meaningful. And I can't tell you the number of staff around the world who've messaged a few of us at the company who they knew were involved in interface with you and helping get everything stood up and ready to go. Just saying, wow, I'm so happy that we did this as a business. Or if you need any help, please let me know. I'd be happy to dedicate a few hours to support the cause. So it's been a real team effort in the background as well. I can by no means take any credit. I've just been coordinating.
Oh, you deserve a lot of credit, but we're grateful for your colleague Dave as well, who's been really helping us. Just explain what your business does in terms of the particularly Lessonly, and then I'll explain a little bit about how we're using it together and the impact it's having.
Perfect. So Seismic is the global leader in sales enablement. And what that means in layman's terms is our platform has a number of different modules that help connect kind of marketing and sales teams, so content to end users. And one of the modules is called Lessonly, and that was a company that we acquired last year. So it's Lessonly by Seismic. So you'll kind of hear Krish and I using those interchangeably. But the Lessonly product is all about training. And so helping whomever that end user is, most of the time for us in the B2B space, it's sellers or customer service representatives who need some support in using materials or doing their job well. And so we've structured a whole platform around kind of bite-sized learning. So if you think about if you got on YouTube and being able to take a series of 2 to 15-minute lessons on something, we have a software that really facilitates that in a very easy to use way, and then also allows you to test and certify users if you wish. So I think, Krish, you've kind of taken advantage of some of those certification items in the Sanctuary Foundation training.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what we saw as a real gap is hundreds of thousands of people have come forward to offer hospitality to refugees, which is amazing. I mean, it's unthinkable 6 months ago that people would be doing this, but it's now becoming very natural. And you probably, if you're watching this, you know someone that's currently hosting. That's how widespread it's become. But when we polled everyone, I think there's around 30,000 people ended up kind of coming onto our site and pledging to be a host. When we polled everybody, nobody had any experience. You know, very little people, a few of the people had met a refugee, had hosted before. So what we thought, because my wife and I, we've been foster carers for 15 years, and before anyone is allowed anywhere near vulnerable children, you go through all sorts of training. And we thought, well, wouldn't it be great if we could provide a boot camp, an essentials training package to anyone that wanted a host, so that we could help them with issues such as safeguarding. How do you make sure that there's an imbalance of power because you're a host? You might not feel very powerful, but because you're the host and someone's visa is connected to you getting on well, how do you not exploit unintentionally or intentionally that power imbalance? How can we keep people safe? People coming from a war zone are experiencing trauma, and that has all sorts of physiological and psychological outputs. How can we make sure we're giving people the basics on kind of trauma first aid? And so this platform is just beautiful. It's so easy to use, and it's both from the programmer and kind of course runner point of view, but also from the guest's point of view. They've loved it. It's really easy. You can make it look like it's yours. So there's not a lot of branding from you guys. You're very keen to kind of white label it, which is lovely. So it feels like it's the Sanctuary course, which is lovely. It hosts video really well. So we got a guy who volunteered to help us make some videos with experts. So people like Save the Children, 318, the Royal College of Pediatricians. We got the best in the world to kind of help advise. And rather than have to run online seminars all the time, you can do it any time of the night. We know there are pregnant mothers doing this at 2 o'clock in the morning when, you know, they've been woken up. Or, and that's been lovely to make that available. And we're doing it for free, and we can funnel anyone we like through the system. And currently, I think I have live stats on my that tell me how many we get. You get a little email every now and again, don't you?
I do daily, and it's been, the uptake has been phenomenal. I think the first day you went live, we had probably more than 200 people log in and take some of the courses. So we were blown away, actually.
It's amazing. 1,327 people are currently doing the course or have started doing the course, which is brilliant. And we think that there's interest around the world in other hosting programs that want to make you this. So, and it's scalable. You know, we're a tiny little charity, but we create this once and then anybody can do it. And it's just been a joy to work with you. Tell us, Laura, what difference do you think partnering on, and it doesn't have to be refugees, but a humanitarian project like this, what difference do you think it makes to a company like Seismic?
I think it really bolsters the culture. As I said earlier, it just shows that, you know, some of the values that we talk about more in word in the company, this shows where we're putting action behind that. And as I said, it's been harder to figure out what humanitarian efforts, how we can support those sometimes during this pandemic when we can't be out actively in the communities. And so this has been such a meaningful way to, again, live our values and also just build connections in the community. I think, Krish, there's loads of people now understanding what Sanctuary Foundation does, even beyond just your current missions. And that's been great. And I think several are probably going to support on an individual basis too.
Amazing. I'm hoping people have enjoyed your platform, and if they're looking for a training mechanism, they'll use it too. I wonder, I guess a takeaway question for those of you that are watching this, what is it that you could do to better inform your staff about what they can do to support refugees, for example? John had me come and do a little presentation to the kind of weekly team update that the pub staff have. Laura's platform has allowed us to train thousands of people to understand the world of a refugee. It's possible that the course itself might be useful to your staff if they're people that are thinking about hosting or volunteering or just want to be better informed about refugee work. They could do it, and you could make time in their day to do it. It probably, each session takes about 25 minutes to complete. We know that because we've got the metrics of how long it takes, and we're getting fantastic feedback, you know, overwhelmingly positive feedback. I think the first day we had like 500 comments, and only 2 of them were negative, and one of them was the videos aren't long enough. We want more information. It's like, oh really? You wanted to say that as a negative? I could have had 100% positive. That would have been great. Now I've only got 99.9% positive. But it could be your company wants to host a webinar. We could come and help you with that, or maybe they'll actually want to do the course. So there are different ways you could try, but have a think. What could your company do to better inform staff about supporting refugees? We're in an unprecedented moment with displaced people. Just this week, the UNHCR, the UN High Commission on Refugees, announced that we have tipped over the 100 million mark. So there are 100 million displaced people in the world right now. Some of those people have been internally displaced. That's people, for example, in Ukraine that have moved from one part of Ukraine because there was a war to another part of Ukraine. And others have become refugees. That means they've had to cross a border and seek asylum or refuge somewhere else. So these are big times for this whole migration crisis. And although Ukraine has taken a lot of the bandwidth, other refugee crises that are going on right now too. And for some people, Ukraine will be the gateway for them to care about a wider group of people. And we're very passionate about that. We've been doing a lot of work with Afghan refugees, for example, who are in the country. But we're recognizing there's something important about this moment. And it's been great to partner with Lessonly Seismic to kind of spread the news and get people better informed. Laura, we'll have you back in a minute for some Q&A. But again, great for your partnership. Now, one more guest, and then Q&A from you, and it's a big one. It's actually my local bank. I've been banking at NatWest since I was a teenager, so it's really exciting that NatWest has been one of the lead groups in the support of refugees, and particularly this Ukrainian crisis. So I'm delighted to invite Michael Duncan to join us. Michael, greetings.
Hi, Chris. Yeah, and thanks so much for inviting me on.
My pleasure. Michael, tell us a little bit about your role. And you're coming from Scotland, which is great. We love the international collaboration. Scotland have really led the way as super sponsors. And, you know, I'm jealous as a person living in England of how the Scottish government have really led things. But tell us a little bit about your role in NatWest.
Yeah, so thanks, Chris. So my role is to oversee and design the bank's giving strategy and programs. So how do we as an organisation drive deep societal impact into our communities through the power of our colleagues and our customers, many of whom are absolutely passionate about making that kind of big difference. And you've already talked about purpose with Laura, and you know, purpose for us is exactly what you've described. It's about driving that societal impact for all stakeholders in society, not just our shareholders, although they remain important. But you know, we have to look at the impact we have in every area of society, and so it's a natural thing for us now, being a purpose-led organisation, to be seeing what can we do to help when things like this happen.
It's amazing. I was so excited when I first met you, Michael, and we've known each other before the Ukrainian crisis. We've worked together on vulnerable children, fostering and adoption. I was so excited that your department exists within a bank. I mean, it's so counter how many people think of the banking industry.
Yeah.
It's not normally thought in terms of philanthropy, purpose, making a difference. I know NatWest is obviously the best banking group, but is it just NatWest that's thinking like this, or are you seeing it within the financial services sector?
Yeah, I think across the sector there's some fantastic activity going on. And so, you know, I'd love to say that we are the best and we are unique in what we're doing, but that would be unfair of me. That there are some great initiatives, and other organisations are supporting charities. You know, historically, banks have been big supporters of Disasters Emergency Committee, DEC. You know, you remember 20 years ago that the only way you could donate to a DEC appeal when it was launched was to take your money to your local bank and pay in over the counter. And one of the things that we've been doing is we've been working with DEC for the last few years to bring that into the 21st century, and using digital assets and online banking and banking apps, websites, to maximize the giving for DEC. And that was initially how we did get involved in Ukraine, and indeed all these disasters and emergencies that have occurred over the years. You know, because of that long history of working with DEC, you know, it was natural when the crisis in Ukraine emerged that we would start working with them to look at it, and what can we do as a bank to support. But what became really apparent very quickly was that there was going to be Ukrainian refugees, and I started asking the question, you know, as quickly as I could, you know, what are we going to be doing to support them? So I think, you know, we have a history of doing that. All banks do, but you know, this was a very different challenge that we were facing, and we wanted to respond to.
It's amazing, and congratulations on the work of the DEC. We saw a huge response, didn't we, to Ukraine? I don't remember the numbers, but it was headline news.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's well over £300 million that DEC have raised overall, and you know, across our colleagues and our customers, and the support to the bank is we've raised 9.5 million of funds through our customers and colleagues for the DEC appeal. So, you know, we've been blown away by the response, and I think there has been a massive emotional response from people in the Ukraine, in the UK, to what's happened in the Ukraine. And you know, we can debate the rights and wrongs about why people are more passionate about that than they are about other crises, but you know, that's just a fact. And people have wanted to do something to make a difference in response to that.
It's fabulous. I've been struck as I've been speaking with you about the range of different things that NatWest Group are doing to support the Ukrainian crisis. You've talked about the DEC element. I know you've been working to support employees of NatWest Group as they host. Can you talk us a little bit through that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I would describe it is that we've looked at it through different lenses. So we've looked at, as a bank, the first lens was we are a bank, that's our core business, it's our area of expertise. So what can we do in that specific area to support the refugees? And we've heard from John and Laura talking about their areas of expertise in their business. And so, for us, the starting point was, well, we offer bank accounts. So we did a lot of work really quickly to look at how do we make that process easier for Ukrainian refugees. And that was actually made easier than for other refugees because of the way the government has changed the rules and the documentation. So that allowed us to very quickly change our processes to streamline it and to make it more easy for refugees. But we did more this time than we've done before. We've published Ukrainian and Russian language guides for refugees arriving in the UK to make it easier. We also knew that a lot of our customers would want to take part in the Homes for Ukraine scheme. So, it's things like making sure that they knew that they didn't need to seek permission or complicated approvals if they have a mortgage or an insurance product with us, so that they just knew that they were allowed to do it without having to seek permission. So these kinds of things, looking at it through the lens of, who are we? What are we? We're a bank. What can we do that's directly related to that? But as you say, Krish, we are a large employer, and we have the power to harness the goodwill of our employees. So, getting them involved in fundraising for DEC and other charities involved was a big part of our response. We told our employees that we were very supportive of them taking part in the Homes for Ukraine scheme, and every employee who takes part gets an extra 2 days of leave to help them support in the arrangements for that. We've created a support group for our employees and sharing resources with them, not least the Sanctuary Foundation and the Sanctuary course materials to guide them through that whole process. And we've been trying to support colleagues more generally to make a difference. We have lots of colleagues in Poland and right in the doorstep, feeling deeply impacted of it. So we've been very flexible in giving them extended volunteering leave where they're supporting people arriving in Poland, where there's specific things they can be involved in. So through the lens of being a large employer, we've been trying to make it easy for our employees to make a difference and do the right thing. And the third lens is simply being a good corporate citizen, again, linked back to purpose. I think all corporates want to be a good corporate citizen. So, it's just going that extra sort of level, supporting specific projects. We're supporting a project in Poland, which is about Ukrainian students continuing their education in Poland, and just having the opportunity to do things like that. We work with the Scottish government, and you're right, the Scottish government has done so much more to be a super sponsor to make it easier for people to welcome people into their homes. So we've made part of our head office buildings in Edinburgh available to the Scottish government to be a reception centre for refugees arriving at Edinburgh Airport. So it's things like that. So, but as I say, the three lenses are quite important to me. It's the, who are we? What's our area of expertise? It's what can we do as an employer? And what can we do as a good corporate citizen? So they're broadly the areas that I'd encourage anyone who's in business to look through. You've got an area of expertise, you have a business, what can you do? And we've heard from John, we've heard from Laura about what they've done. How do you get your employees involved? And then what can you do as a company to give back? So some brilliant opportunities for all businesses to do that. And why wouldn't you?
That's such a helpful set of lenses, because people are thinking, okay, maybe my business doesn't have a direct interface with, refugee work. Hospitality, I can make sense of that. Training, I can make sense of that. But my company, I can't see the direct link. So if there isn't one, I love your other two categories that you've got. How can we support employees? And you're right, for a whole bunch of mortgage owners or people that are letting out their properties, that fear in the back of their minds that have I broken some rules, will I be able to do that, and the fact that you proactively thought of that, I thought that was really, really helpful. I know it empowered lots of people to consider the Homes for Ukraine scheme, and that corporate citizen. How could we come alongside government? What can we do to support either at a local authority level or a national level? Those are really good lenses, and so I guess that's a little challenge you could take away to your team as you're watching this. Maybe could you make some time in a board meeting or in a strategy time just to say, okay, look, here we are, nearly 100 days into the Ukraine war. Sadly, this crisis is not going to go away. It's not going to have a quick resolution. There's still a need, even as the kind of the news cycle moves away from Ukraine, there's still a need for us to dig deep. And for me, that's the challenge. You know, some people say, oh, you guys only care about Ukraine because you're bandwagon jumping. Well, let's prove everybody wrong. Let's prove that actually our commitment is beyond the headlines and beyond the kind of flashiness of it all. But actually, we're recognizing there are people caught in the middle of this that are going to need our long-term help. And how can we use the three lenses that Michael's given us to help us keep going and that support? Fabulous work, Michael. So grateful for what NatWest have been leading in, and other banks are available, but we're grateful for what you're doing. Thank you. Let's have all our guests back just for a few minutes, and we'll take questions. I've got loads of questions, but if you do have a question, just pop it in the chat. I'm wondering, actually, John and Laura and Michael, as you heard from each other, were there questions you wanted to ask someone? And as follow-up, let me give you first dibs before I launch in with some questions.
I think that the first question I would have, probably for both Laura and Michael, is, particularly Michael, with it being such a large business in the financial services sector, how engaged have your employees been? And have you had to keep labouring the point, banging the drum, or has it come quite naturally to them?
I think our employees have been incredibly engaged, and the challenge has been to meet that demand for action. So I'm getting lots of requests. I want to volunteer to support refugees arriving in the UK, and I'm not hearing that there's a massive demand for lots of activity. There's maybe a need for some funding for projects, but so it's the challenge has been to find the things that people can do other than just give financially to support, or trying to come up with creative ideas that are very practical to meet Scottish Government support, things like that. So our colleagues were overwhelmed. One of the interesting things was that when we were doing a lot of our Disasters Emergency Committee comms, we had to be very careful in the language used, because DEC is a humanitarian aid organisation. It needs to be impartial and seen to be impartial. So a lot of our original comms, and particularly external comms, were not using the word invasion or war. And that was generating quite a lot of anger, particularly from Ukrainian colleagues now living in the UK, or Polish colleagues. So a lot of what I was having to do is explain why it was that we had to use appropriate language when talking about the DEC, but when doing other comms, we absolutely could make our position very clear. If we're saying we see this as a brutal invasion. So interesting challenges you face in engaging employees and dealing with the passion and the emotion. But I think that's been more so for Ukraine crisis than for other crises. And there will be other challenges if there are other crises in the future. How do you get people motivated to do the right thing?
It's a good question, John. How about you? Are you finding compassion fatigue? People were interested at the beginning, and that's waning, or how's it going with the pub world?
No, I don't think so. I think the only thing really, and I alluded to earlier, is there's just so much going on within the hospitality sector at the minute. We've had Brexit, we've had the pandemic. We're now in a cost of living crisis. We've got the Jubilee around the corner, which is a great celebration. It's nice to sort of talk about something positive for a change alongside the work that we're doing with you. So no, there's reasons to be cheerful without a doubt, but I think it's just subtly referencing it from time to time to ensure that it remains front and center of people's mind. And I think that's why, we're doing the partnership with BBG, Budweiser Brewing Group. We had you on, Chris, on our internal huddle, which is kind of a cheap equivalent of the One Show, which always goes down every week. But that's great. That goes out to all our employees and operators. So I think it's just subtly referencing it from time to time. We put it on our various platforms. So not kind of ramming it down people's throats, but ultimately just dropping it in from time to time to say that we are still here. We are still doing stuff behind the scenes. And if you want to get involved, you know where to come.
Yeah. One area that's come up quite a lot is making jobs available for people from Ukraine. There seems to be an interesting kind of time lag. So people considering coming to the UK, and at the beginning it wasn't very many people that were considering coming to the UK. Most people wanted to stay in bordering countries like Romania or Poland or Moldova because they'd hoped they could go back quickly. But the longer the war lasts, the more people are thinking, actually, I might need a long-term solution. And if I need a long-term solution, I might need a job. So people seem to want to know that jobs are there, but might not want to take them up immediately because, you know, it's pretty traumatic moving. It's normally mothers with children. They need to just sort their children out at school, and they need to, you know, just land themselves before they apply for jobs. But what are you hearing about employability and the, I suppose you talked a bit, John, about the skill shortage, but can you see that maybe other businesses or yours might be able to offer jobs to Ukrainian refugees?
Yeah, very much so. And I think that's where, you know, partnering with various different organisations and charities in our space is helpful. So, for example, we work with a licensed trade charity, and we work with another charity called The Only Pavement Away as well. And so they connect people in vulnerable groups, including refugees, which is very, very helpful through their jobs board. So again, having these, you know, developed partnerships really plays its part, because where we might not be able to help directly, although we have, you know, with the perception challenge and the skills shortage, we do have issues, and we have got our own publicans and pubs keen to be involved. What we're also keen to dissipate across the industry is how others can help. And so working with other charities and organisations is really, really useful. So the licensed trade charity, so they look at hospitality roles, and what they're saying is that if there's anyone that worked in hospitality businesses in Ukraine that have come over as a refugee into this country, there could well be an opportunity for them here, and they can help with placements and support, and both in, you know, practical guidance and emotional support as well. So yeah, there's two key organisations, as well as other pub companies and breweries. The licensed trade charity and Only a Pavement Away are two kind of spearheading organisations within our industry that can really help play the part as well. So there really is that kind of unified effort. Everyone really is getting behind this and want to make it work.
Yeah.
Just to pick up on that, you know, it's certainly something that we're looking at ourselves in our group is, you know, what opportunities do we have, and how do we reach out to Ukrainian refugees who may need a job, whether that's in Poland or in the UK. I was actually speaking to the charity Business in the Community earlier today, and they're actually piloting some ideas, and not just for Ukrainian refugees, but for all refugees in the UK, and looking at, you know, how do we create that ecosystem across business in the UK. So it'll be well worth being linked in with Business in the Community and looking at what they're doing in this space to you know, marry skilled refugees and asylum seekers and businesses who are increasingly facing skill shortages and employment recruitment challenges.
Laura, what are you seeing in the tech world?
Yeah, I was going to say, echo a lot of what has already been said around. I think there are organizations that are helping match people of different backgrounds, whether that's refugee background, other disadvantaged groups or diversity groups. So that tends to be how in the tech world our recruitment teams would go to market to try and find a more diverse workforce. And I think similar kind of to what John said around actually understanding who had hospitality experience, a lot of that going on in the tech world. And we're still quite a small business in Europe, so we didn't have customers or employees in Eastern Europe. However, a number of my colleagues in some of the larger technology organizations or just some other companies that did happen to have a presence there are doing quite a lot around helping people relocate, keep their jobs, work in an adjacent technology company if the current company they were with can't assist, et cetera. So there's quite a strong community and tight network within especially the B2B SaaS industry. So a lot of information sharing and support going on among the leaders there.
It's great. There's so many kind of virtuous circles going on here, aren't there? So as you become a more inclusive workplace, that's a sense of purpose, isn't it? That you're working alongside people. You feel like you're helping people that would have otherwise struggled to get access to work, whether those are Ukrainian refugees, Afghan refugees, new arrivals from Hong Kong, or all sorts of underrepresented groups. But secondly, all the research tells us that diverse working teams are more effective, more impactful. They can reach more people. They have insights that give them a competitive advantage. So that's a really virtuous circle, isn't it? You're doing good, and it's helping you perform better as a company. It's not without its challenges. I'm sure there are all sorts of, other, pastoral and kind of trauma-related issues that are there. But overall, you're doing good, and it's better for the company. So really encouraging. We're nearly coming to the end of our time together. Was there anything else that you wanted to say that you'd forgotten? I want to give you the chance for a last word, each one of you.
I'm happy to go. No, I don't think so. I think my, by all means, if anyone wants to kind of reach out to any of us and, discuss any ideas, I'm sure you can find us either contact details or via LinkedIn. But no, I think that, I think we're just, it's not a straightforward process. Every business has its challenges to overcome. But I think what I've really found with, the Ukrainian crisis is just how enthused people at every level of the business are really keen to make a difference and make an impact. And I think, Laura, you alluded to it earlier in terms of your exec team not hesitating to get involved at free of charge service as well. And I think that's something that we found is that, everyone within our business, right from the exec management, our owners, Fortress Investment Group, all the way down to our people within our pubs or even our part-time staff that, help make our pubs run from a day-to-day basis. They want to get involved. So I think there could be more that could be done. And hopefully we've just shared a few tips and examples of what, we've been doing to try and, buck the trend and encourage people who've had a really, really challenging, 6-12 months to come over here and really make a difference and feel, empowered, embodied and part of local communities. And that's what pubs and hospitality is all about.
Brilliant. Thank you. Laura, any last words from you or Michael?
Just a thank you, I think, Krish. I think I speak on behalf of Seismic as well, that you've taught us a lot in our partnership. And I think that's been really lovely for our staff. And we're grateful to be able to work with you and contribute in a small way to the work you're doing. So thank you. And for anyone listening, especially if you're wanting to emulate something like this in another market, I'm happy to get in touch, or happy for you to get in touch with me, because I think it is something we would love to continue to support.
That's amazing. We are very grateful. It has been transformational to have a platform like yours available to help so many people. So really grateful for you, Laura. Thank you. Michael, last words from you.
I was just going to echo Laura, thank you to you for your leadership in this space and making so much of this happen. And for people listening, I know I represent a big organization that therefore can do quite a lot, but actually small organizations can be really impactful and powerful in this space as well. And, we talked about the lenses that you can look at it through. And I think just being imaginative in how you use the power of your organization to make a difference in society is something that I'd encourage all organizations to do. And the small things add up to make big difference, and go for it.
Yeah, you're so right. And again, thank you, Michael, for what you're driving in NatWest, not just in this space, but across a whole range of different areas. You're making an impact. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. This will be available online afterwards, so you can share it with your teams or make it available to on social media so other people can join in. We're so grateful for John and Michael and Laura, not just for their time today, but for what they represent from their companies. We'll send you an email with some details about how you can do the course if you'd like to. And if you've had an idea, a crazy idea of how your organization might want to be part of this movement of social goodness and kindness to people in need, drop us a line and we'd love to explore that with you. So thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day.